Hello and welcome back to Sky Class. This is a short tutorial to show you how to add a test to your existing class. I'm not going to be going back and showing you how to set up a class. There's a separate tutorial for that. Creating a class and then adding content to it. I'm assuming you've already done that you have a class, you have at least some content set up, and now you want to set up a test. A test is a special section within the class, and the slides inside that section are in fact questions in the test, and the way the student answers them is recorded so that you can later look at the results and even download those results. Normally, the specific ways that students pick their path through slides is not recorded, so a test will be a special kind of section within your class. So first, you're going to pick the class that you're going to add the test to, and the test will be inside a new section. Sections are for the most part used for you to organize your content. So you'll have a group of slides and you're going to be using sections to organize them so that you don't have too many slides in one section. Might make it difficult for you to manage all those slides, make a really long page. So you'll use a section to hold a certain collection of slides, knowing that you can jump between them when you need to. But in the case of a test, the section is important because the section is the test. And if you had multiple tests, you'd have each one of them in its own section. So you're never going to have someone leave a section if they're taking a test to go to another section until the test is over. In fact, that ends the test. So as soon as you link outside the test section, you're effectively telling the system that the student is done and the results of that test are now final. If they go back and take the test again, we're creating a whole nother entry to hold their responses. So when you get to your class, you're going into the class, you're going to add a new section to hold that test. And you can drag and drop that or double click that, and then you're going to go in and edit that section. Normally the title of a section doesn't matter very much. It's for your reference and students have no way of seeing that. In the case of a test, it's more important that you name the section correctly because the name of the section that holds the test questions is the name of the test. So it'll make it easier for you to find and understand the results you're looking at if you name the tests in a way that'll make it easier for you to remember which group of content you've offered them in the context of that test. I'm not going to follow my own advice here, I'm just going to give it a generic name. You then have to check this box. This is the differentiator. You're telling the system that the slides inside this section are questions. And you're going to see extra options as you're editing those slides and options based on having checked this. So you're not going to check this for a normal content section, only for a test. So we're going to save this. And now we're going to have a certain number of slides in this section. And each slide is going to be a question except for the last slide. The last slide is going to display the results to the student. You don't have to give them a final slide that displays the results. You can just link them after the last question to another section, a content section, and that ends the test. But you might want to give them the slide inside the section to present results to them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to first, this is going to be a very short test. In fact, we're going to give them one question and one results slide at the very end. So I'm going to create two slides quickly. First will be the one and only question in this sample test. We're going to call it question 1. And we're going to have Alexa read the title of the question when she reads the question. So she's going to get to this slide and say question 1. And then she's going to start reading the question. So this can be very helpful in the context of a test. You can use the title to designate the number of the question so that the student knows where they are in the process. You could have an introductory slide also in this process that lets the student know how many questions they're going to have to answer if you want to do that, especially if it's a rather large test. So the question is going to be real simple on this one. We're going to ask, do you seek the Holy Grail? And we're going to make this a simple yes or no question. And we're going to tell the student, we're going to indicate if the question was answered correctly, Alexa is going to tell the student after they answer the question if they got it right or wrong. This is completely optional if you want Alexa to do this, but you can have her do that automatically. We're going to check it for the purpose of this example. We're going to put it on here and click save. So that slide is now saved. We're going to go back now and do the results slide. So you're going to have obviously many more questions in the process. We're just going to, for brevity, just do the one question. This is going to be the results slide. We don't need her to read that. This is just for the purpose of displaying in the card that the student can see in their Alexa app what their results are. So we're going to offer them these results. Offering them the results of the test is optional. You don't have to do that. You could just thank them for taking the test. Now, you can also optionally tell them how they did. And there's some special tags that have been developed to allow you to embed into what Alexa says their test results. And I'll show you how those work. So you would say out of, and then there's a certain number of questions that are going to be in this test, but you don't have to remember how many slides you've added. You can have it dynamically assigned by Alexa. And you just use the questions tag. It's square brackets with the word questions in between. When Alexa gets to this point reading the slide, she will add in the number of questions that have been asked previous to this slide inside this test. So if they've answered 10 questions, she'll say out of 10 when she reads that number. So out of this number, whatever dynamic number, out of this many questions, you got, and then a certain number right, and that tag is the right tag, and you missed, there's a wrong tag. So the right will be automatically filled in with the number of questions they got right, and it'll also, here in the results, give them the number that they got wrong out of the total in the test. We actually might want to do this differently because we're not going to know whether it's singular or plural. So maybe we'll just leave this word off. So we'll say they got so many wrong and missed a certain number. Okay, so that's gonna work very well. We're gonna save that results slide. Oops, we got to tell them that this is just a next slide. That we're gonna link after the end of this slide back to the opening section for the class. Now, it's important that we do that because in advancing them outside this test section, we're telling the system that the test is over and there are no more questions that are going to be forthcoming. So we're going to save that off, return to slides, and you can see that. So you can see our question and then you can see the results. We're going to first do the options for question 1. Okay, now we know what those are already. We're just going to ask, do you seek the Grail? And so we're going to add some options for this. We're going to add 2 options, a yes and a no. So let's just add those quickly and then go in and edit them. Okay, so the yes question is going to be the correct answer. We're going to designate that. You only want to designate one correct answer per question, unless you want them to get it right in more than one case. So if there are multiple correct answers and you want to do it that way, you certainly could. But this is going to indicate that this is in fact of the 2 the correct answer. And after they take this, we're going to link them to the next slide, and you can see it's already pointing to the final slide, which is exactly where we want them to go. But if there were multiple questions, this would be linking to question number 2 at this point. And again, there's a benefit in going ahead and creating all the slides first and then going back and setting up the options, just as we saw in the other tutorial, because then the slides are in place for you to create the options so that you can easily pick the slides that you want to take people to. So we're going to save this. I do want to note that there's a field in here called score value. This has not been implemented yet, but we are going to add a scoring system that allows a result to happen at the end of the test based on a total score, and you can give different score values for different questions, but this has not been implemented yet. It's an upcoming feature. So we're going to save that. That's the yes, and now we're going to edit the no response. Now that's not a correct answer, so if they're not seeking the Grail, they're making a big mistake. So that's going to be incorrect. We're going to leave it that way. However, we are going to be taking them to the exact same place, and this is normally how it's going to be in a test. Each question is going to have multiple responses, but typically linked to the very same next step in the process, which is usually the next question, or in this case, which is the final results slide. So this test is now complete. We are going to go down to the results slide and create the next option for that. And we're going to link that back to the welcome slide for the test, or excuse me, the welcome slide for the class itself, which is in this section, and this is the opening page for the class. So that's going to take them back. So when they're done taking the test and they receive the results and they say next, we're going to be leaving this section entirely, this test section, and going back to a content section. And that's going to flag to the system that this test is complete and done. Okay, so we have a finished test here. This one's all good. There's only one response. It's going to be a very simple response. And we can see in both cases the responses are linking to the same result. Okay, so now let me show you just quickly what this looks like when you've completed a test and students have taken it. You can go in and look at the results of that in your reporting section. So if you go down to reporting, we're going to look under a different class. I'm going to show you a class here that is a class that has, it's a sample demo and it's got a lot of results already in it. And so I'm going to show you that. In this case, you're going to be running this report. You're going to see, that's not far enough back. We're going to have to go back to January to see results. Here, we'll run that report. And you're going to see all the results from taking this test are listed here below. It's all been me taking the test as a series of, as part of the beta testing process. So you can see in each case there's 7 questions in this test. You can see how many I get right and wrong in each case, and my final score on that test. You can then export this if you want as an Excel compatible file. This would of course show you all the students in your class and all the tests for that class. It would allow you to export all that data, and you could then use that to assign completions or grading or whatever you're using for the test. You can also go to the students section of the portal, and you can find the student that's taking those tests and select that student. And if you go in here, you can go to the test section, and this is another way to find the information. You could see for a specific student all the tests that they've taken, and if they've taken the same test more than once, you can see the information on when they took it and how they did on the test. But you'll see here a collection for this specific class, or across all classes actually that you're running, that the students in, you're going to see all the tests that they've taken, when they took it, and what the results are. You can furthermore click that and you can get all the details on that test. So in this case you can see every question in that test that was completed. This test was never actually completed. Only 3 of them were completed, and only 1 of those was correct. But you can see that. You can see how they answered each of the questions in this case. So you could drill down to a very specific result. If you're wanting to know how a student specifically did on a test, which ones they got right and which ones they got wrong, this interface under the student information section of the site will allow you to drill down to that level of precision. Alright, so that's it. That's creating a test. It's very simple, and adding it to your class.